For centuries, the Roman Empire wasn't just a nation. It was the world. Its roads connected continents, its armies crushed kingdoms, its laws shaped civilization, and its cities defined what it meant to have power. Rome ruled lands from the chilly shores of Britain all the way to the sun-baked deserts of Egypt, from Spain to the Middle East. To the ancient world, Rome was eternal. And yet, the empire that called itself invincible collapsed into ruins. This isn't the story of just one battle or a single invasion. It's the complete story of why the Roman Empire collapsed. This is the story of when the eternal empire fell. Make sure you've resubscribed so you don't miss this epic journey into one of history's greatest mysteries. But here's the thing, Rome wasn't born an empire. It didn't start with golden eagles and legions marching across continents. No, it began as something much, much smaller. Picture this, a few scattered huts on the hills overlooking the Tiber River in Italy. That was Rome, a tiny settlement surrounded by bigger, tougher neighbors. So how did this underdog not only survive, but go on to dominate the known world? The answer isn't what you might expect. It wasn't about being the biggest or the richest, not at first anyway. It was about their mindset, their core values. The early Romans built their society on 4 powerful pillars: discipline, unity, military service, and an absolute obedience to the law. This wasn't just a set of ideals. It was their way of life. Every citizen understood their duty to the state. This shared purpose created a bond that was unbreakable. While their rivals might have had larger armies or more territory, the Romans had something far more potent: organization. They were masters of structure. Think about it. When you see a picture of a Roman legion, what do you see? Perfect lines, shields interlocked, a human machine built for victory. This discipline on the battlefield was a mirror of their society. They weren't just a mob of fighters. They were a professional, organized force. This organization allowed them to defeat larger, more chaotic armies time and time again. As Rome grew, it established the Republic. This wasn't a kingdom ruled by one person's whims. It was a system designed for stability and expansion. They created political institutions like the Senate to guide the state. They built an incredible network of roads, not just for trade, but to move their armies and supplies with lightning speed. Their logistical genius was legendary. And perhaps most importantly, they developed a legal system that brought order and predictability to a chaotic world. Their greatest test, and their greatest lesson, came from conquering the Italian peninsula. Here, Rome could have been a brutal conqueror, crushing everyone who stood in their way. But they chose a smarter path. Instead of destroying local cultures, they absorbed them. They allowed conquered peoples to keep their customs, their gods, and a degree of local control. As long as they pledged allegiance to Rome, paid their taxes, and provided soldiers for the legions. This was a revolutionary idea. It didn't create subjects who hated their rulers. It created partners. It built loyalty. Former enemies became allies, their soldiers reinforcing the very armies that had once defeated them. By mastering Italy, Rome learned the art of governance, the secret to turning conquered lands into a source of strength, not rebellion. From a muddy village to the master of Italy, Rome's journey was fueled by discipline, unity, and a genius for organization. It wasn't a story of instant greatness, but of slow, deliberate, and unstoppable growth. The foundations were laid, the lessons were learned, and the Roman eagle was just beginning to spread its wings. The world would never be the same. Ever wonder how a republic can become an empire? Let's talk about Rome. As the Roman Republic conquered new lands, it got too big to handle. Think about it. Immense wealth and a flood of enslaved people poured into the city, completely changing its society. Powerful generals, celebrated for their victories abroad, started gaining more loyalty from their soldiers than the state itself. Suddenly, personal ambition overshadowed the old Roman values of unity and public service. The result? Chaos. A series of brutal civil wars tore the Republic apart. The final nail in the coffin was when Julius Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River with his army, a direct challenge to the Senate's power. The Republic was effectively dead. Then, in 27 BC, Caesar's heir, Augustus, was declared the first Roman emperor. The Republic was officially over, and the Roman Empire was born, ushering in an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity, known as the Pax Romana. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more history shorts. Have you ever wondered what 200 years of peace looks like for an empire? For ancient Rome, it was a golden age called the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. For nearly 2 centuries, the empire didn't just survive, it thrived. Massive cities rose from the ground, bustling with life and commerce. Incredible aqueducts, marvels of engineering, carried fresh water for miles. A vast network of roads connected the sprawling empire, making trade and travel easier than ever before. Grand colosseums were built for entertainment, and trade routes brought exotic goods from distant lands. Rome was at the peak of its power and influence. But here's a thought: peace can lead to comfort, and comfort can sometimes breed weakness. This long period of stability set the stage for the dramatic changes that would eventually lead to the empire's decline. What do you think happens when a society gets too comfortable? Ever wonder how an empire as mighty as Rome could just fall apart? Well, a big part of the answer is that Rome got too big for its own good. Seriously, it was massive. Imagine trying to run a country that stretches from Britain all the way to Iraq, but your fastest message travels at the speed of a horse. It could take weeks, even months, for an emperor's order to reach a distant province. This slow communication made it nearly impossible to govern effectively. The borders were so long they were a nightmare to defend, and the massive army needed to patrol them cost a fortune. With the emperor so far away, local governors and generals started acting like kings of their own little territories. Corruption became rampant, and loyalty to Rome started to fade. In the end, the very size that made Rome so powerful also stretched it to the breaking point. Thanks for watching. Imagine a time when being the most powerful person in the world was also the deadliest job. Welcome to Rome's crisis of the 3rd century. Between the years 235 and 284, the Roman Empire burned through more than 20 emperors. That's a new emperor roughly every 2.5 years. And here's the kicker: almost all of them didn't retire peacefully. They were murdered. How did it get so bad? The power to choose the emperor no longer rested with the Senate or the people. It belonged to the armies. Legions across the empire would declare their own generals as emperor, leading to constant, brutal civil wars. Stability was a distant memory, as the empire was torn apart from within. This chaotic 50-year period shows us what happens when the rule of law is replaced by the rule of the sword. Because in the end, a sword's loyalty is only as strong as the hand that wields it. Ever wonder how a mighty empire like Rome could just crumble? It wasn't just barbarians at the gates. A huge part of the story is something we all deal with today: the economy. Rome was addicted to war, and wars are expensive. To fund their massive army, the emperors got desperate. They started playing tricks with the money, adding cheap metals to their silver coins. Soon, these coins were practically worthless. Imagine your money becoming useless overnight. That's what happened. Prices skyrocketed in what we call hyperinflation. Trade completely broke down. Farmers couldn't afford to work their land and just walked away. The rich got richer through corruption, and the middle class, they were wiped out. It's a powerful lesson from history. When the economy breaks, even the greatest empires can fall. Ever wondered how the mighty Roman Empire, with its legendary legions, just fell apart? Well, a big piece of the puzzle lies in who was actually fighting its battles. See, Rome's power was built on the backs of its citizen soldiers, men who fought for their land, their families, their republic. But over time, things changed. Romans themselves stopped joining the army. So, who filled the ranks? Mercenaries. Instead of citizens loyal to the idea of Rome, you had paid soldiers whose loyalty was to the highest bidder, usually their general. This created a massive power shift. Generals with private armies could march on Rome itself. To make matters worse, Rome started hiring foreign tribes, the very people they once called barbarians, to defend their borders. Suddenly, the empire's fate rested in the hands of outsiders who had no real reason to die for it. And when the real test came, they didn't. Have you ever wondered what it looks like when a superpower crumbles? For centuries, Rome was the undisputed giant of the world, a seemingly eternal empire. But as the 5th century dawned, that invincibility began to crack. On the frontiers, enemies were gathering, smelling blood in the water. The Goths, the Vandals, the Huns, the Franks, they weren't just knocking at the door anymore. They were kicking it down. For decades, they launched relentless attacks, chipping away at the empire's defenses. Then, the unthinkable happened. In the year 410, the Visigoths breached the city walls and sacked Rome itself. Imagine the shock. But it didn't end there. Less than 50 years later, in 455, the Vandals did it again, plundering the city for 2 weeks. The myth of Roman power was shattered. The eternal city had been violated. Not once, but twice. The world watched as the greatest empire it had ever known began its final, dramatic collapse. Ever wondered how the mighty Roman Empire fell? Well, it's not that simple. Rome didn't just collapse overnight. In a last-ditch effort to survive, the empire literally split itself in two. This created the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, with its capital in Constantinople. But here's the twist. Only one half survived. The Eastern Empire, the Byzantine side, was richer, more stable, and had stronger defenses. It thrived for another 1,000 years. The Western Empire, however, wasn't so lucky. It was poorer, constantly under attack, and politically unstable. It just couldn't recover from the constant pressure. And so, while the East lived on, the West crumbled, marking the end of an era. Did you know the Roman Empire didn't fall with a bang, but with a whimper? In 476 AD, the last emperor of the West, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was quietly removed from power. There was no epic final battle, no dramatic last stand at the city gates. The end wasn't a spectacular explosion, but more like a long, slow fizzle. For centuries, Rome had been the center of the world, an unstoppable force that conquered and civilized. But in the end, this colossal empire, weakened by internal decay, endless civil wars, and constant pressure on its borders, simply collapsed under its own immense weight. It wasn't conquered in a single day. It just faded away. An empire that once ruled the known world simply ceased to be. What do you think was the final nail in the coffin for Rome? Let me know in the comments below. Why did the Roman Empire fall? It wasn't just one thing, but a perfect storm of problems that brought down one of history's greatest superpowers. First, Rome got too big for its own good. This overextension made it impossible to govern effectively. Imagine trying to manage an empire that stretched from Britain to the Middle East with ancient technology. Then came political chaos. Emperors were constantly being assassinated, leading to civil wars and instability. The economy wasn't much better, with runaway inflation and crushing taxes that crippled the middle class. The military, once Rome's pride, became reliant on foreign mercenaries who weren't always loyal. On top of all that, widespread corruption and a loss of traditional Roman values eroded society from within. The empire even split in two, making it weaker. So, it wasn't a single fatal blow, but a slow, painful decline from 1,000 cuts. Ever wonder what happens when a superpower crumbles? Rome, the eternal city, teaches us one timeless lesson. No empire lasts forever. Imagine this, a civilization so mighty, so vast, it seemed invincible. Yet, its fall wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow, creeping decay that unfolded over centuries. Think about it. Power without the discipline to wield it wisely. It just implodes. Immense wealth, but without balance in society. The whole system collapses under its own weight. And what about the legions, the most feared army in the world? When their loyalty faltered, the empire's very protectors became its gravediggers. The story of Rome's decline is more than just history. It's a warning. It shows how even the greatest thrones can fall, not with a bang, but with a whisper of internal rot. This is the story we're about to uncover. Subscribe to join us on this journey.